our top story. Student activists here in Ontario are pledging their support for their counterparts in Quebec. Taking a live look at Queen's Park this morning, that's the media studio where the Canadian Federation of Students will be addressing this very issue. They're also renewing their call for lower tuition fees here in Toronto and, in fact, right across the province. We are going to continue to monitor this situation. As you can see here, the media is setting up. And once this begins, we're going to head back to there and listen in live to this press conference. So stay with us for that. Now, this is all in support of an ongoing fight pitting students against the Quebec Liberals. Here are some shots from Montreal for you. They were back out last night in the thousands. They made some noise with pots and pans, but this time it all stayed relatively peaceful with just 4 arrests. Wednesday night, more than 500 people were arrested in Montreal. We're going to go back live now to Queen's Park Media Studio. We're going to listen live to the Canadian Federation of Students and their take on all of this situation. Again, this is in solidarity, in support of the ongoing student action and protests still happening in Montreal, in Quebec, as many students there fighting for lower tuition fees. We've been watching the story here live, of course, with our counterparts next door. So again, as we've been waiting, the Canadian Federation of Students setting up live for this press conference. Let's listen in to hear what they have to say here.
To discuss, to really condemn what's happening in Quebec from the government to support the students, and to also talk a little bit about Ontario education and how Ontario students are feeling inspired by their allies in Quebec. So I'll just introduce folks on the panel here today. This is Xavier Lafrance. He's a student formerly from Quebec who's now studying at York University here in Ontario. This is Benoit Dupuis, who's from OPSU, who's going to give us a little bit of a perspective from workers. And my name is Sandy Hudson, and I'm the Ontario chairperson for the Canadian Federation of Students. So we'll start with Xavier.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of context about what's going on in Quebec, right? It's been covered more and more in the last few weeks in English Canada, but I want to give you some important information, I think. The strike was first launched against the tuition hikes of $1,600 and $25, And the movement is opposed to this tuition hike, but also against a very clear policy of commodification of education and imposition of a user-payer culture in the province of Quebec, right? So that's the broader context. What the student movement is saying in Quebec is that education is a right, it's a public service, and it should be free and accessible and publicly funded. Right now, though, the student unions that are bargaining with the Quebec government are asking for tuition freeze. So there's a broader perspective and the immediate demand, which is tuition freeze. Now, this strike has been history in the making in Quebec. It has been the biggest and the longest in the history of the province. It's been going on for over 100 days now. On March 22nd, there was a big day of action. More than 200,000 people took the street. And on that day, the number of people on strike, students on strike, peaked at 300,000 students. It's been it still is around over 150,000 students that are on strike in Quebec. It's been an incredible example of democracy and very inspiring one. Every week, all across the province, people, students do gather on their campuses in general membership meetings, that is, meetings of all the members of the student unions that gather, hundreds of them, sometimes thousands of them, to discuss the evolution of the movement, but also to talk about the right to education and austerity measures that we're facing in Quebec and all over the world. It has showed incredible tenacity. Tons of very creative actions have been taking place for over 3 months now. For 31 nights in a row in Montreal, students and their allies have been taking the streets. It still happened yesterday night. It's been a very self-transformative movement for a whole generation of young people in Quebec. They're not backing down. There were 200,000 on the street on March 22nd. There were around 300,000 on April 22nd, and they were pretty much too large a number to count on May 22nd, probably well over 250,000 away, somewhere between 250 and 400,000. It has also brought the idea, the notion that education should be free in the public space in Quebec in a very important and significant way. Now, the government's strategy against this incredible movement has been, first, a refusal to bargain. It took the government 8 to 9 weeks to actually sit down with the students and bargain. During these 2 months, the students have been facing really severe repression. Students and activists have been losing eyes, feet. They've been beaten down by the police. They had police car rushing into them, etc. Once, finally, the government announced that they would bargain with the student unions. They've been trying to divide the movement. They've been trying to bargain with FEC and FERC and not with class. It hasn't worked. Every student federation has been showing solidarity and said we're going to bargain together or we're not going to bargain. Now, in face of that, of this determination, the government has been chose repression, some more repression. There's been tons of injunctions on campus trying to force strikes to stop through the courts. And there's been recently, you've heard of it, the Law 78, which is surely against the chart and anti-constitutional, that really restricts our right to take the street and demonstrate. It also includes really large and massive fines for student leaders and individuals who might encourage people to go on with the strike and exercise their democratic right to protest. Now, in face of this law, class have been saying that they will defy it, not just in court, but also in the street through solidarity in action. And it's not just class. It's also hundreds of thousands of students. Now, you saw on May 22nd the incredible show of solidarity that took place when people took the street. There's been the nights of protest, they're still going on, and you see more and more, not just students, but the general public showing support. And there's been in Montreal recently in the streets, in other towns in the province, people going out with pans and knocking on pans in the street, showing solidarity. And you look at the pictures of people and you look at the people doing that, it's not just students. It's older, it's their parents, it's their family. It's solidarity that's getting larger. Now, the Quebec student movement needs support. The government said that it would bargain now in face of the show of solidarity on May 22nd. They invited the student unions to bargain again, which is a good sign, but we're still facing repression, right? And so they need support in Quebec, and they've been getting it from all over the world. Protests and solidarity have been taking place in places like Paris, Sao Paulo, Vancouver, New York, Australia, Taiwan, etc., etc. And now, obviously, in Ontario, we also want to show support. Last night, a student solidarity network was created, which is regrouping student unions, CFS is participating in it, individuals, labor organization, different social organizations. So we're launching this network, which we're not representative, we're not talking on behalf of this network right now here, but it's been launched and there will be action. There will be a day of action on June the 5th. So it's coming up. So this is...
All right, we've just been listening in live there at Queen's Park, and I guess the biggest piece of information coming out there right at the end as we were hearing about an update as to the student movements and protests in Montreal. June the 5th, it looks like that date has now been stated as a day of action. Here in Ontario, it's a form of solidarity by Ontario students here who would also like to continue to fight for lower tuition in this province, but they say that with the ongoing action in Quebec, we here need to provide support for the students on that side of the provincial border. So June the 5th, it looks like a day of action here in Toronto to support the students in Montreal. We're going to continue to listen into that, and we'll bring you any new details that come forward with regards to that event. So stay tuned for that. All right, we've got some other news that we are following for you this morning here on CP24. City crews expecting to wrap up their inspections and also all of their repairs under the guard.